Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com with another video in learning C Sharp. Now, today we're going to be talking about functions. But the funny thing about C Sharp is there are no real functions in the way you're used to. Usually, most programming languages, there are functions that you can just write a function that does something and then takes some inputs, and then there are methods where you have a class and then that class has functions built in. In C Sharp, there are only methods. Every function has to be part of a class, okay? And this definitely took me a second to appreciate because in pretty much every other programming language, I was used to just being able to make freewheeling functions and declare them wherever and all that fun stuff. So, but we haven't covered classes yet. We haven't covered creating objects in C Sharp yet. So I don't want to have to sit there and go through that first and teach you guys how to do a function. But what if you wanted to create just some functions to do some normal stuff? Well, there is a way to do that, okay? So when you see a C# program, you'll notice that there's the main program, which is this part, the public static void main int. That's sort of the main function. That's what the compiler runs the program from there. But then you'll also notice that above it, there's this class, main class. So literally the program starts out declaring a class. And within that class, you can declare functions. So I can't declare functions above, it'll error. I can't declare functions within, it'll error unless I'm declaring a class. So what you can do is if you declare functions here, then you're fine because they're methods of the main class. Cool. But usually when you declare a method of a class, you have to type in, you have to use what's called dot notation. So for example here, this console.writeLine, that's a function. It's actually a method. The writeLine is a method of the console object. Okay, and pretty much every function we've used up till now has been a method of an object. So when we talked about the array methods, all of that was your array dot something. There's no sort of freestanding functions. So if I want to create a method of the main class where I don't have to write main class dot whatever, you have to make it a static function. Okay, so that's why I'm writing static here. So static int. So the way this reads is I'm saying this is a static function. Okay, for today's purposes, it means a few things, but for today's purposes, it just means I won't have to write main class before saying hello. Int. This means that this function returns an integer. Okay, so that means at some point in the function, I got to make sure I return something, or else it'll error. This is the name of the function, so that way I can call the function. These are the parameters. So this basically, there's always parentheses after the function's name. And if the function can take a parameter, which means can I give it some information, it's going to be in there and it's going to tell me what kind of information I could put in there. So in this case, I can put in some information that is an integer. And in the function, as I write the function, that whatever that information, which we don't know what it is yet because I haven't used the function yet, we're going to call it x. And I'm going to make this function really simple. It just takes whatever x you pass onto it, whatever integer you give it, and it's going to return, meaning it's going to give back to you that number plus 5. Okay, so functions that return a value can be used as expressions. They can be used to pass parameters into other functions because there's some number coming back or some information coming back. Could be a string. But sometimes you just create functions just to do a thing. So in that case, they're not going to return any kind of value. So then you have a function like this. So static void. Void means it will not return a value. So there'll be no return statement. So kind of like how this one returned an integer over here, this has no return statement. It just does a thing. So say hello. One thing it does is write on the console, hello. Okay, and they're declared. So again, the syntax. Okay, and again, I got to put it in this area. So I got to put it between main class and main. And then you declare something. You could use the keyword static if you want to make a static method. And again, more what static means, we'll get into more detail later when we actually introduce classes more in full. You can also declare whether the function is private or public. Okay, and we'll talk more about that when we get to classes as well. So that's a class thing. But since I don't, so you notice I don't use the word private or public here. So when you don't use those words, when I don't tell the program whether it's public or private, it assumes that it's public. Then you declare the return type. So what kind of value is this function going to return, which could be double, could be string, could be float. Just depends what kind of information you're looking to get back out of it. And the name of the function, and then your parameters. So this one took a parameter that's of type integer that we'll call x. This one takes no parameters. Cool. Okay. So with that, let's take a look over here. I decided I wanted to write something to the console. But what I wanted to do was write the result of add5, the add5 function, if I pass 5 as a variable. So what happens is that when I run this function, it's going to take 5. 5 is going to be x. So it's going to be 5 plus 5, and it's going to return that value, which is how we ended up getting the 10 here. So here, I'll run it again. 10. And then here, when I ran the say hello function, so notice I have to put the parentheses. This is in all languages, or most languages, you have to put the parentheses after the call of the function, even if you're not putting through any parameters. Okay, and again, in C#, I gotta always make sure I got those semicolons at the end of every command. It will not let you run the code if you miss one semicolon. This is not JavaScript. In JavaScript is very forgiving. Okay, don't want to declare your types? That's fine. Don't want to return a value? That's fine. Forgot some semicolons? JavaScript don't care. JavaScript is the honey badger of programming languages. C#'s a little bit more strict, so you gotta have really good discipline in writing your code as far as where you put stuff, how you declare it, which is not a bad thing. It just means you're gonna end up writing cleaner code or else it just won't run. Okay, so say hello, we get hello. Cool. So, but here's another cool thing you can do. You can override functions. Now, what does it mean to override a function? It means to make multiple versions of the function. So notice how this version of say hello doesn't take a parameter? Well, I could just make another version, same name. So it still says say hello, except it is going to take a parameter. We'll take a parameter, that's a string, and we'll call that x. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is that if you do pass a parameter, that's a string, it's going to say hello x. So let me do say hello again. And this time we're going to say hello Alex. And see it prints hello Alex. Because what it does is that when you create multiple versions of the same function, long as they have different parameter lists. So I could create a different version. So basically I could create a version where it takes 2 strings, and that would be treated differently. I can't make 2 versions that take no parameters. There can only be one version of every sort of permutation of possible parameters. Okay? But what it does is that when the function is called, it takes a look at the parameter list and looks for the version that matches the types and the amount of parameters that it received, and then runs that version of the function. Okay, that's called function overriding. Okay, so, and I can use functions to, this is what's called dry code, in the sense that if you find yourself like typing the same code a lot in your program, like let's say I find myself writing console write line hello a lot. Why keep typing it up over again when I can condense it to this? And then every time I need to, I just write that. Okay, so that's the purpose of functions, to take blocks of code that you know you're going to repeat over and over again to turn them into little encapsulated pieces that you can use over and over again. A couple points of advice of writing good functions is that each function should really do a small piece of something. So if you have a big thing that you know you do a lot, but you're doing a lot of things to do that thing, don't make it one big function, turn it into like 10 functions that do small pieces along the way, and then maybe even functions are inside those functions. Okay, so if I have a function to make dinner, okay, inside that function might be other functions of, open the refrigerator, cook the chicken, set the table, and then each of those, inside those functions, the individual. So think through what you're about to program before you just make one big function. So I just want to leave it at that today. This is how methods or functions work in C#. My name is Alex Merced. I'll see you guys in the next time.